A prince who walks away from war is dragged back to wear a crown. But the real battle begins only after the coronation. What happens when a young king is forced to lead, but can't trust anyone around him? Let's unravel the dark, chilling journey of the king. In the early 15th century, England's political landscape was in turmoil. Henry Percy, known as Hotspur, had just led another successful campaign against the Scots. Fresh from victory, he approached his king with a request to pay the ransom Wales demanded for his cousin's release. The king refused, dismissing the matter as not worth the expense. Furious at this slight, Hotspur lost his temper, hurling insults at the monarch and reminding him of his family's years of loyal service before storming out. Meanwhile, Prince Henry, the king's eldest son, lived a carefree life far from court politics. Going by the name Hal, he resided in a modest house in town, deliberately distancing himself from royal duties. He preferred spending his days chasing women and drinking with his companion John Falstaff, a retired knight. His simple life was interrupted when a messenger arrived from the castle with news that the king had fallen ill and requested his son's presence. At first, Henry dismissed the invitation, reluctant to face his father. Later that evening, John convinced him that avoiding the meeting would only lead to lifelong regret. Reluctantly, Henry agreed and made his way to the castle. The meeting went as he expected. The king informed him that despite being the eldest son, the throne would pass to his brother Thomas. Henry wasn't bothered by this decision, as he had no desire for the crown, but he became concerned upon learning that Thomas planned to march against Hotspur the next day. Henry objected to the younger generation becoming entangled in their father's conflicts, but Thomas ignored his concerns. That night, Henry found himself unable to enjoy his usual diversions, troubled by thoughts of Thomas in danger. The following day, he traveled to the battlefield to see his brother. Thomas wasn't pleased by his arrival, but Henry made it clear he wasn't there to steal any glory. He simply wanted to protect his brother. He sent a messenger to Hotspur with a challenge to single combat, which Hotspur accepted despite his father's objections. The duel between Henry and Hotspur was evenly matched, both men being skilled warriors. They began with swords, but after losing their weapons, resorted to hand-to-hand combat. After an intense struggle, Henry managed to tackle Hotspur to the ground and kill him with a concealed dagger. His victory prevented a large-scale battle and saved countless lives, but Thomas was far from grateful. He had hoped to establish himself as a leader, and now Henry had claimed all the glory. Burdened by the weight of taking a life, Henry returned to his drinking habits. Days later, Sir William Gascoigne, the king's chief justice, arrived with somber news. Thomas had died in battle, and the king was now on his deathbed. The kingdom needed a leader to prevent chaos, and Henry was the only choice. Grief-stricken and angry over his brother's death, Henry confronted his dying father, calling him a monster before the old man breathed his last, leaving the country in Henry's hands. As preparations for the coronation began, servants were sent to collect Henry's belongings from his townhouse. John Falstaff was unceremoniously evicted, learning of his friend's new position from the servants rather than from Henry himself. The coronation proceeded smoothly, and at the celebratory dinner afterward, Henry opened gifts sent by other monarchs. He received a gold chalice, which he gave to his sister Philippa, Queen of Denmark, and a clockwork bird for his cousin, the Earl of Cambridge. The final gift proved surprising, a simple ball sent by the Dauphin of France with no accompanying note. Henry decided to keep it as a reminder of the carefree boy he once was, before the weight of the crown changed everything. The day after Henry's coronation, Sir William Gascoigne pointed out that the ball sent by the Dauphin was actually meant as an insult, suggesting they should respond accordingly. Henry, however, preferred conciliation over conflict. He wanted to focus on domestic matters rather than escalate tensions with France. While spending time with his sister Philippa before her departure, she warned him to be cautious of the court, reminding him that everyone had their own agenda and a king could never fully know who to trust. When the Archbishop of Canterbury tried to educate Henry about the French royal genealogy, information he might need to claim the French throne, Henry was visibly bored. Despite what his father might have wanted, he had no intention of invading France or Jerusalem, a stance that displeased many nobles in his court. After this meeting, Gascoigne praised Henry for prioritizing his people's welfare, but also cautioned that ignoring France's provocations might make him appear weak. Meanwhile, John Falstaff was discovering how difficult life had become without the prince's friendship. Tavern owners no longer welcomed him warmly, and he was expected to pay his own way. When he mentioned having connections in high places, an innkeeper bluntly reminded him that he'd been abandoned like an old dog. The situation grew more complicated when Henry interrogated a prisoner seeking asylum in exchange for information. The man claimed to be an assassin sent by the French king to kill Henry. Information the court nobles immediately interpreted as an act of war. Still reluctant to engage in conflict, Henry sent a letter to the French king calling the assassination attempt cowardly and suggesting that if he wanted war, he should send his army and fight properly. Henry's continued hesitation became a concern among the nobility. The Earl of Cambridge and Lord Grey were approached by French agents offering them better terms if they switched allegiances. Unsure what to do, they consulted Gascoigne, admitting their waning faith in their king. After promising to address their concerns, Gascoigne again spoke with Henry, arguing that allowing these issues to fester would only lead to worse outcomes. This could be Henry's opportunity to truly unite the kingdom. Finally recognizing he had little choice, Henry agreed to declare war against France, citing the French agents' attempts to turn his nobles as the final provocation. He also ordered the execution of the Earl of Cambridge and Lord Grey, deeply disappointed that someone he had considered a friend had conspired with the enemy. Needing someone trustworthy by his side, Henry went to town searching for John, who was hurt by the king's long silence. Henry apologized for the lack of communication, explaining he'd been overwhelmed with royal duties, but now needed his best friend's support. He offered John the position of marshal and chief military strategist, which John accepted on one condition: Henry must settle his tavern debts. Soon after, Henry and his army sailed to France. They discovered an abandoned village and established camp there, constructing catapults to lay siege to Harfleur. Henry preferred this approach to minimize casualties, though as days passed without results, the nobles grew restless. The archbishop pushed for a direct attack, but Henry refused, with Gascoigne supporting his decision, emphasizing the importance of establishing a garrison for supply lines from England. The strategy eventually proved successful, and Harfleur surrendered, asking only that women and children be spared, a mercy Henry readily granted. Later, the Dauphin of France, Louis, visited their camp. He described in disturbing detail what would happen to Henry and his men if they didn't surrender immediately. Henry listened calmly, simply wished the Dauphin good night, then ordered John to prepare the army to march onward. After traveling many miles, they set up camp and sent 3 young pages to gather firewood. In a shocking act of cruelty, Louis found the boys, killed 2 of them, and sent the 3rd back to camp carrying one of the severed heads as a grim message. Outraged by the Dauphin's brutal murder of the young pages, Henry ordered John to kill all their French prisoners and display their bodies on spikes by the river. John refused to carry out the command, reminding Henry that neither of them were the type of men who would resort to such brutality. His refusal highlighted the moral compass that had guided both men throughout their friendship. The next day, Henry's army continued their march until they reached the hills, where a chilling sight awaited them: Louis's massive army, vastly outnumbering their forces. While the nobles immediately advised retreat, John interrupted with an unexpected strategy. He explained that the ground between the armies was a flood bowl, and since his aching knee predicted rain that night, the field would become a muddy bog by morning. The French army, with their heavy armor and horses, would get stuck, while Henry's men could attack on foot without armor, moving quickly through the mud. Combined with their skilled archers, this mobility could give them a decisive advantage. The nobles dismissed the plan as foolish, but Henry trusted John's judgment and made a deal. If it rained during the night, they would attack at dawn. Just as John predicted, the rain came, and as the sun rose, the army prepared to execute the plan. When Henry saw John preparing to lead the bait party, the most dangerous position, he tried a different approach first. He visited Louis to propose single combat, as he had done with Hotspur. Louis declined, overconfident in his superior numbers and suggesting that Henry's offer stemmed from fear of defeat. Returning to his men with renewed determination, Henry delivered an inspiring speech before his soldiers took their positions. The trap worked perfectly. Louis sent half his army after the bait team, only to have them immediately showered with arrows and trapped in the mud bog. John's group inflicted significant damage, slowing the French advance, and when Louis committed the rest of his forces, Henry's unarmored troops joined the battle on foot as planned. Every aspect of John's strategy proved effective, with the French struggling helplessly in the mire. As Louis finally realized he was losing, he sought Henry for a duel, but Henry refused to fight a prince who could barely stay upright in the mud. In a final humiliation, Henry allowed his soldiers to kill the Dauphin instead. Though the entire army now held their king in the highest regard after such a remarkable victory, Henry had no time to celebrate. He had found John's body on the battlefield. Overcome with grief and rage, he ordered his men to kill all the remaining prisoners before regrouping. A few days later, the King of France came to Henry. offering surrender with one condition. Henry must marry his daughter, Princess Catherine of Valois. The union of royal families could prevent future conflicts, so Henry accepted the arrangement. Upon returning to England, where crowds eagerly awaited the wedding celebrations, Henry spoke privately with Catherine before their public appearance. Catherine made it clear she wouldn't simply submit to him. He would need to earn her respect. More surprisingly, she questioned why Henry had attacked France in the first place, insisting her family had never sent an assassin, nor a ball as an insult. Her father, she claimed, was a beloved king who never wanted war. Remembering his sister's warning about court intrigue, Henry grew suspicious. He confronted Gascoigne, questioning how he had found the supposed assassin. As Gascoigne's account grew increasingly vague and contradictory, Henry pointed out how much the man's territory had expanded after the conquest of France. Under pressure, Gascoigne finally confessed. He had fabricated France's provocations. He defended his deception, arguing that true peace could only be achieved through victory, and the kingdoms were now finally united. As Gascoigne knelt, appealing to his king's sense of greatness, Henry swiftly ended his life with a dagger. Afterward, Henry reunited with Catherine and asked her to promise she would always be honest with him. She gave her word as they heard the crowd outside chanting Henry's name, their voices celebrating a king they believed had brought them glory, unaware of the web of lies that had led to their victory. That's it for today's recap. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want more epic summaries. Drop your favorite movie requests in the comments below, and until next time, take care.